Hi everyone, I'm Liz and welcome back to Elizabeth Ann Can Stitch. Today I'm going to show you how I use MarkUp RXP for cross stitching. So what is MarkUp RXP? It is an app that's available for iPads and for Android tablets, and it was specifically designed to read cross-stitch charts. I use the app on my iPad with my Apple Pencil, so that will be what you see in my tutorial today. With MarkUp, you can load your PDF cross-stitch charts and use it to highlight and mark your stitches. You can zoom in and out to read your charts more easily, and it even combines multi-page charts into one view so that you do not have to flip between pages on a paper chart. As you mark off your completed stitches, it will keep track of how much progress you are making and give you an estimated time to completion based on your average stitch rate. In this tutorial, I'm going to focus on the basics and what you need to know to get started. We'll talk about finding PDF cross-stitch charts, how to load one into the app and get started stitching, and then I'll show you a few of the tips and tricks I use for setting your projects up for more efficient stitching, and I'll show you some of the statistics and project tracking that the app can do for you as well. I have linked MarkUp's website in the description box below. They have a lot more in-depth and specific tutorials that are available for everyone to access. Just a disclaimer, I am in no way affiliated with MarkUp. This is a product I purchase and pay for through a yearly subscription with my own money, and I've just gotten a lot of questions about how to use MarkUp and really what it is, so this is just a little bit of a beginner's guide to MarkUp. All right, let's get started on the iPad. Okay, we're going to start with what MarkUp is really for, which is to help you read and stitch from your PDF cross-stitch charts. So you will see I have my friend Elizabeth, Frizzy Lizzy Stitches Gumroad site open because she just released a wonderful new freebie for a name tag. And so I got her permission today to use her new freebie chart in this tutorial because you're going to see the chart as I show you how to load it. So I did get permission from the designer, and I will have this chart linked down below if you would also like to stitch yourself a little name tag. And you can also check out her other wonderful designs here in her shop. I recently stitched the Crafty Goose design and it's adorable. So I have already purchased and downloaded my chart, which you can see right here. So once you have your chart downloaded, you need to save it somewhere on your device or on the cloud. I use Apple's iCloud system between my iPad, iPhone, and MacBook to kind of sync all of my devices. So all I do is I click the share button and I save it to files, and I have a cross-stitch pattern folder in my iCloud account that I will save everything to. The most popular place probably to buy digital cross-stitch charts is on Etsy. And I will say 95% of the time when you buy a cross-stitch chart that has been designed in a PDF format, it will load correctly and very easily into MarkUp. I say 95% because I have had it happen to me once or twice that PDFs did not load and I couldn't really figure out a way to troubleshoot them. But most of the time, this works perfectly for cross-stitch charts that are already in a PDF format. So once you have your PDF chart downloaded and saved somewhere on your device, it's time to go ahead and move into MarkUp. So MarkUp is this app icon right down here, and I'll just tap on it to load it. Since I've been using MarkUp for a year and a half, you'll see I have quite a lot of things in my MarkUp library. And here is the folder where I kind of keep active WIPs. So you can see a lot of the different projects that I'm currently working on. And what we want to do first is add a new project. So there is a little button down in the bottom right called Add New Project. It has a couple of different options. If you have a paper chart, you can try this camera option. I'm going to be honest, I have not had a lot of great success with loading in paper charts to this app, so I won't be covering that in these instructions. I'm only going to be covering how to load a project from a PDF file. So I'm going to go here to this fourth option, which is PDF and image files. So now it's going to bring up the files on my iPad. And so I'm going to go to my iCloud drive. I'm going to go into my cross stitch patterns and I'm going to find the chart I want to import. So the first thing it's going to ask us to is to identify all of the pages in our chart pack so the app knows how to read them. So the first thing it wants us to do is select all of the pages that have the chart on them. So this PDF has one main chart page, and then it has a couple of extra pages to give you an alphabet and some backstitching. So I only want to import the main chart page for this design. So you can see this is highlighted green here. I'm going to tap here to unhighlight because I only want the app to import this as the main chart. And then I'm going to hit the next button. Next, it wants us to select the pages that have the key on them, and that is correctly selected as the second page. Then it wants to know which of these pages has the picture on it. So this is the picture page, and that will just be used for kind of the cover in our main library of projects. If your PDF does not have a picture page, you can just set the chart or some other page as the picture, or you don't even really have to have one, but most charts will come with kind of a front cover page. Okay, so it's loaded, and the first page, it's only showing me two colors, a white and a purple, which isn't exactly correct, but we don't really need to pay too much attention to this page right here. I'm going to go ahead and just hit done, and then I'll come in and show you how to manipulate everything to look right. So now you can see we have our cross-stitch name tag chart loaded in, and right here you might see it says open to update. So we're going to go ahead and open up our project. And here is the chart that it loaded in for us. And one of the really handy things about MarkUp is it does show you your backstitching that is built into the chart right on the grid. You can't mark off your backstitch with this app, but it does show it to you. That way you don't have to refer back to a separate document or separate paper to see where the backstitching goes, which I find really handy in MarkUp. So the first thing we want to do is make sure our symbols are being detected correctly by the app. And then we want to make sure the colors are assigned correctly to our different symbols. So I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to use my Apple Pencil. You can also use your finger to do this, but I like to use my Apple Pencil. And up here, you can see we have three different options. We have markup, symbol, and we have zoom. So anytime you are moving around the chart, you want to make sure you're in this zoom mode, and that lets you move around and zoom in and out on your stitches. Then if we want to highlight a symbol, we would click the little symbol button, and you can see right here it says select symbol, nothing is selected. So I'm going to go ahead and select this square. And you can see when I hit select on the square, and then I'm going to go back to zoom, you can see everywhere a square is, it's now highlighted with a little yellow bubble. Woohoo! So you can see up here, it's telling us this square is assigned to DMC 30. And if we want to make sure that's correct, we can go down here at the bottom and hit the key button. And oh, interesting, it looks like the square is actually DMC 891. So that's interesting, but no problem, we can fix that very easily. We're just going to tap on our color DMC 30 over here, and right here it'll prompt us to enter a new DMC color. So I'm going to enter 891. You can also use this to enter any color you want if you are making changes to the called for colors in the design. Okay, so now you can see that my square is accurately reflecting the red 891 color. One thing to know about MarkUp is that the thread libraries built in are for DMC, Anchor, and Madeira. So if you're using a design that calls for overdyed threads, what you want to do is set up your color key using the DMC conversion, but then you can change the name of the color to the overdyed floss you're using. So what makes that really nice is that all of your symbols will show roughly the correct color by using that converted DMC number, but then when you're stitching, the label will show you the actual thread name you're working with, and I'll show you how to do that right now. So from the markup page, if you click into this little box up here that shows our symbol and our color, it'll pull up a floss list, and so you can see DMC 891 with our square symbol, and there's a little blue info button right here that we're going to tap on. And then right here where it says edit name, so down here, the thread color, it's going to show 891 red. But say I'm using Classic Colorworks Licorice Red. I can go ahead and type in Licorice Red and X out. And now when I highlight my red color, it will show me that the name of it is licorice red, making it much easier to flip through my floss ring and find the thread I'm actually working with. Okay, so let's go ahead and set up our next symbol, which is the X. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to click the symbol button. Actually, let me zoom out a little bit so we can see. Here's the X and here's the square. And you can see I have a highlighted circle around my square symbol because that is what I had selected previously. So I'm going to go back to the symbol button and it's highlighted with the red, and I'm going to tap it again to clear out the symbol that I had previously selected. And now it says no color again, select symbol. So I'm going to select the X and I'm going to hit zoom so that I can zoom back out and make sure that all of my X's are properly selected. Okay, so let's go back to the key and we can see that the X calls for DMC 3609. Okay, and so now you can see it's updated over here to this pink color and, oh, cancel. And if I want to change that, like let's say I was using an overdyed floss for this as well, I could come back in here and hit that info button and I could type in, let's say I'm using Weeks Charlotte's Pink. So now it'll show me my overdyed thread name while still using that reference DMC color for the coloring on my markup. Okay. And so this chart is really simple. It's just two colors that we just set up. I showed you how to add the DMC color, how to change it to an overdyed floss name if you'd like, and then we would be ready to start stitching. So for me, I like to start in the top right of my charts. So I would probably start with this little heart motif. So I'm going to click the symbol button to deselect the X and reselect the square. And let's pretend I had just stitched these 6 stitches over here and I am ready to highlight them and mark them as stitched on the app. What I would do is while the symbol is highlighted, I would click the markup button, and that looks like the little highlighter, and then I would just run my finger or my Apple Pencil over the stitches that we just marked. And voila, there is our first 6 stitches marked off. So now I'm going to pretend that I have just stitched a line of the X symbol. So I'm going to highlight the X and I'm going to use the little markup to mark off a row of pink stitches. And so if I go back to the zoom, you could now see where I have started, stitching on my chart. And if we come down here on the bottom, you'll see there's markup, there's key, which we just looked at while adjusting our floss colors. There's the pictures page, which again is just kind of the front page of your chart. Beautiful. And then we can go down to the info to see more information overall about our chart. So one of the features I really liked is that it shows you how many stitches total are in the design. So this chart has 633 total stitches. And based on what I've marked so far, I've marked 21 stitches, and that is 3.32% complete. The other things it tracks is the numbers you've stitched per day, how long you've spent stitching on a particular day, and then it will also give you your average stitch rate per day, your stitch time per day, and your estimated number of days to completion. And this is all based on as you use the app. So the more you use the app and the more you work on a chart, the better this will get at predicting your estimated days to completion. I don't really use this section much, but I really like seeing how far along I'm getting on my projects and how many stitches I still have left to do. So one thing I really like that this app also does is if you go into full chart mode, this is a single page, so this technically is the full chart, but if you had multiple pages, you would want to go into View Full Chart, which will put it on one page. Again, this is a one-page chart. I'll show you what a multi-page chart looks like in a second, but it will put you into this mode and it will pop up 2 extra buttons over here. One is unmarked. So when you select that, it's going to highlight every stitch you haven't completed yet. So you can see all of these, and like this little area is the area we had already completed. I don't use this mode that often, but the one I prefer a lot is the preview button. So if you click preview, that will show you what the finished design is going to look like when you're done stitching. And you will also notice that since this chart has a lot of backstitch, the backstitch is not able to be read and marked off by the app, but you can see it when you're stitching to use it as guidelines. Of course, this is a custom chart, so I would have to rechart my own at Elizabeth Ann Can Stitch when I get ready to stitch my name tag. But lucky for me, Frizzy Lizzie and I have the same first name, so I get to use her charting for Elizabeth. Okay, I'm going to go back to one of my current projects and show you a little bit what a multi-page chart looks like. We're going to open up Cherry Magpie, which is a piece I've been working on for the last month that I started at Stitch North. So this is a 4-page chart, and right here you can see that what I'm looking at is page 1 of 4. So down here, if I click the View Full Chart button, it will combine all 4 of my pages into one page. So that way, when I'm stitching across a page break, I don't have to be flipping between multiple pages. It's just super, super handy. Also, since this is such a large chart, when I zoom out, it's showing me what I have already stitched and marked off, which is just kind of fun because you can kind of see where you're at on a design. And I will show you my stats on this one just for fun. This chart has a total of 11,949 stitches, and I have completed 3,900 stitches. I still have 8,000 to go, and I'm at 32.72% complete. Based on my stitching over the last month, I have done 355 stitches per day on average for an hour and 45 minutes per day. And it says if I continue at that rate, I'll be done in 23 days. Also, because I've been stitching on this for a while, you can look at another view up here and see a little bit more information. There is this little calendar view, and that will show me the number of days I actually worked on this project and the progress I got on all of those days. You can see that when I started this at Stitch North, I worked on it a ton those first 3 days. And I have been working steadily on it over the last few weeks since I've been home. On this 4-page chart, when you're in, this is the single page mode, but when you hit full chart to go to the 4-page mode, that's where you would get the preview button. And that's where I can kind of see, you know, a mock-up of what the design is going to look like when it's finished. And actually, this would be a good time to kind of show you some of the different settings and options you have for displaying your cross-stitch chart in the app. So I'm going to go over here into this little gear box and pull up our settings. And so at the top, you can see our project info. So this is the project name, which was the name of my PDF. You can see when I created the project. You can see all the kind of current stitch counts and project stitch counts. And then we have this project setup section that can be really handy if you're loading in projects that maybe came from a scan of a paper chart or a photo. There is a mode where you can adjust the grid. So I don't want to do it on my chart because I'm currently working on this and it will mess things up. And I'm also just not going to get into trying to load paper charts because, to be honest, I haven't had a ton of success with it. But this is where you would adjust your grid, and you can rescan your symbols if, you know, after you've adjusted your grid, you want MarkUp to rescan and refind all of your symbols. So the main settings down here, you can do things like turning on and off the grid, turning on and off the center line. You can show page breaks, guidelines, rulers. There's a lot of different display settings you can do with how your project will look. You can also choose the line thickness for your center line, how often you want your thicker grid lines. I have it left kind of to the default where every 10 lines is a thicker line, just because that matches how I'm used to reading charts. There's also the symbol selection. So when I highlight the symbol, I like it to do a full highlight versus just outlining the symbol. And I have mine set to circle rather than square. And I'll just show you the difference. So outline. You can see here it outlines it with a little yellow circle, and then to highlight it, you can see it just fills in that circle. And I like to use the little highlighted circle just because I feel like the square, here, let me show you what the square looks like. I feel like the square, even though it's highlighted in yellow, can be a little bit harder to see. And so I just tend to set mine to circle and to highlight. And that's how I use the symbol search function. You can also, if you don't like that yellow color, oops. You can scroll down here into the color settings, and symbol search color is what this yellow is right here. So if you wanted it to be something different, you can set it to whatever color you find easiest to see. You can also change your markup opacity to light, medium, or solid. And markup opacity just refers to when you're marking things off your chart. So if I go to a section I have marked up, you can see that the medium still lets you see the symbol behind the markup. But if I switched that to solid, you would no longer see the symbol. And then if you switch it to light, it just makes the color very, very faint and transparent. So I tend to just use medium for my markup color. And if you want to set goals for yourself, there's also a section down here for setting your daily stitch target. I've never used any of these settings. And then you can see I have the color Wham Bam highlighted. So it's showing me these little pink dots everywhere I need to stitch that color Wham Bam. Just pretty handy and nice. So yeah, so this is what your kind of homepage will look like when you have multiple projects, and you can just very easily click between the different projects and load up your chart and, kind of get right back into stitching. It's really handy to be able to zoom in and out to see what you're stitching on. I am now obsessed with stitching from my iPad and really don't see stitching any other way for me anymore unless it's a very, very small chart. So yeah, I think that's everything that I wanted to show you about how you actually use the app to cross stitch from. So yeah, that is how I set up a project and actually cross stitch while using MarkUp. I find it such a great tool to use for being able to zoom in on my charts and track how much progress I'm making on a project. Those are really kind of like the two biggest reasons I love the app. And when it works with a chart, it works great. And I would say I have about a 90 to 95% success rate loading in charts that are specifically designed as a PDF cross-stitch chart. I have had trouble with kind of one-page freebie charts, with loading in paper charts, but there are a lot of good videos and tips and tricks out there on MarkUp's own resources and other videos. So I'll link any resources I've used down in the description box below. And I hope that if you were hoping to get a glimpse at MarkUp and how it works, that you found this video helpful. And I wish everybody happy stitching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.